Hello, so this is part 2 of the video that I did yesterday. I decided to look into one of my favourite branding projects that I've ever done and show you underneath it and how I came up with the final idea and where I got to with it. This is the second part of it. This is about 15 minutes long, this second part, and you'll see the resulting brand at the end of this video and how I got to that solution and the rest of the stuff. As I mentioned in the last video as well, let me know if you like this format, let me know if it works, because I'd love to make more of these, because the first one that I made ended up being 25 minutes long. So this is the rest of the video, hope you enjoy it, and I'll speak to you soon. And then, if I move on, these are the ideas now where I started to play with some of the original ideas that my other designer had done at Genius Division. And this idea here as well was first put together by one of the other designers, which is James. He started to mess with this idea. And at this point, I'd started to work with a font that I absolutely love now called Druck. Druck Wide is the font that I was using. It felt professional, it felt different, but it also felt epic. And this is kind of a thing that I really wanted to get across in this, that the conference, because conventions are, they're epic, they're really cool, and people from all around the world, superstars in horror, was coming to this convention, so it had to feel epic in some way. So I started playing with Druck Wide, and it started to work, and this was kind of the first revisions of this, and I liked the idea, but my only issue with this was it was quite controversial. It's an upside down cross, and you don't really want to annoy anybody who follows any particular kind of religion generally. So I knew this idea, with the idea in the back of my mind that it needed to look professional. I knew that we probably couldn't use this as the main logo, but I kept the idea because I thought it had seeds, and I'll come back to that in a minute. So we'd start to develop this, and I'd returned this idea. So if you remember this idea here with the weapons, this had been at the back of my mind whilst I was doing the cut throughs in the logo, and I knew there was something with this, but I couldn't work it out. And at this point here, I'd started to work out the seed of it. So I took Druck, I chopped off one side of the H, so here, I chopped off one side of the H, and I realised that if you just put a dagger to the side of it, it still looks like a H. And this was the first seeds of the idea that ended up being the entire brand. So I started playing with the weapons thing, and then when I started thinking about the weapons thing even more, the first thing that came to my mind was Pulp Fiction. So there's the scene in Pulp Fiction just after Bruce Willis has ran over Marcellus Wallace, and he's fighting with Marcellus Wallace. They run into that, they run into the store, like the weapons store or whatever it is, the thrift store where the gimp is. And Bruce Willis is looking at all the weapons across the ceiling, and all the weapons are famous weapons from movies. And that was in the back of my mind, and it immediately linked with this. At that point, I knew I had the idea. I knew this was it. And I started to think about the idea a little bit more, and I thought, the thing that's in all horror films is killing people, and the thing that's in all horror films is weapons, because you need a weapon to kill somebody. So what if I make a kind of logo that can be different in different states, and also has a nod back to classic horror films? And I thought, that's it. That's perfect. You've got the seed of the idea there. So this is the early stages of me experimenting with that. And the obvious one is Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and the second one there is, I'm a bit of a horror film geek myself, which is why this is one of my most favourite projects. And the second one there is the scene from Brain Dead, where he lifts up a lawnmower like that and plows it into zombies. And I think that one is the Scream Knife, if I remember rightly. And the final one on the right is Shaun of the Dead with a cricket bat. So I'd got the seeds of an idea, and then I started to develop the idea a little bit more in this in this document, and these are the early stages of that idea. I knew I needed to still have some kind of generic version of the logo, so this is where the Druck wide thing came back in, because I wanted to create an epic looking logo that felt professional. Quite a hard line to travel, really, quite a hard line to navigate. So I worked with Druck wide, and I came up with this kind of thing. Originally I just had Horicon all straight on a line, but then I just knocked the con down just a little bit, and it just creates a little bit of friction and a little bit of unease in the logo, and that was it. I knew at that point that was the kind of the form that the logo was going to take, the form that the word mark was going to take. And then I just had to get the cutting right. The cutting took ages to get right, by the way, and even now looking at it, I'm still not 100% happy with this kind of bit where there's just a little bit of a cut there that I could have perfected. But looking back at your design work is never a good idea. You always think that. And I started to work out the cutting thing, and then it all fell into place. The idea behind the logo ended up being that the word would say Horicon, it would have a slash through the word, and the weapon on the H, we'd make it look like the weapon had gone through all the other letters and landed on the H. So the various versions of the logo, there was the clean slash there was the clean slash for that one, there was the rugged kind of slash for the chainsaw, because obviously it wouldn't go through it smoothly, and then there was the even more wasted version there for the lawnmower, because obviously if you're driving a lawnmower through some words, it wouldn't look quite the same. And then for the zombie one, which is Shaun of the Dead, I put on a couple of other tweaks in there, a couple of nice little Easter eggs. And then I did a different kind of slash for Jason, I think that is, Jason's machete. So that was the kind of final logo idea I went for, and then I just refined it a little bit more. And these were the final versions of the logo. So even here, you can see I wasn't even thinking about colour. I was still thinking about the form of the logo, how it looked, what it was going to finish like. So these are the final versions of the logo. And then I moved on. To looking at the website. That's the place that I started, because the whole project was really only going to be the website and the branding guidelines and a couple of bits of print stuff initially. So I didn't have much other stuff to apply it to. So I looked at the website then, and at this time we was designing in Photoshop, and I started to get this kind of bright green thing in my head, and I was thinking about this unease thing again, and I wanted to use the bright green because it's kind of obnoxious. It still looks professional, but it's obnoxious, and it's sometimes a little bit hard on the eyes, and I wanted to get that kind of feel over. And this was the initial attempt at a web design, and I just couldn't figure the idea out. I really struggled with the website for this. I think it's because I jumped into the web stuff too early. I should have done some of the brand guideline stuff first, but I didn't. I jumped straight into the website, and I couldn't work it out. And then eventually I worked it out. It was the grunge thing. And at this point, when I made this a couple of years ago now, 2017, wow, grunge was already out of fashion, but grunge is a thing that I really like putting in websites because it's out of fashion, but it still looks really frigging cool. So I still do it on some websites, and I did it recently on another project called Craft Metropolis. So I still had the idea of grunge, and I thought, right, I need to take the grunge to another level and just throw it all in there because it's appropriate for a horror convention. And then the final homepage design ended up looking a little bit like this. So I used all kinds of different grunge effects, loads of different particle effects and all kinds of stuff. I just threw everything at it. I kept the green on there, and I used this kind of corporate-y blue to kind of make it look a bit more professional. And then I replicated the slashes through the main navigation items up here too. And then at this point I started introducing this secondary, classically kind of scary font, the one that had some of the elements of a scary font but not too many, and it didn't look very cheesy, but it still looked okay. That's Gallo Tree, by the way, really nice font. And then I started to kind of play with some of the people who was speaking at the convention and doing different stuff for their images, and this is where the whole brand started to come together for me. And I always like to put little Easter eggs in things as well, because I think wit plays a really important part in design. And I always like to put wit in there if I can. And I did that with the Easter eggs of the weapons in the logos. And then I also did it in the website by having these little messages that popped up around the website that were all famous quotes from really crappy B-movie horror films that people who were going to this convention loved. The whole when you're a horror geek, you love B-movie horror films. You know, it's not the mainstream horror films you like, it's the B-movie stuff. So putting all these symbols in here, and I had a lot of fun making all these little assets. If I would have done this again now today, I would have made all these assets into shareable stuff too, that could have been put on Instagram, that you could have made t-shirts out of. The opportunities for these phrases is endless, and I never really took them beyond the website, which I'm disappointed that I didn't. And then finally, because this video's run on, a really long time, finally I went to the brand guidelines. So I'm going to show you these brand guidelines in the final document just quickly. I went for a kind of a multi-colour scheme on this project. There wasn't one true colour when we launched the project, and this is something I like to do with branding guidelines, and I like to do with brands. I don't always like setting a colour. Sometimes I like to just give them a series of colours and see where the brand develops. And because HorrorCon was quite anarchic, it was meant to be, it wasn't mainstream, you know, there still was some punk spirit behind this brand. I wanted to give them the opportunity to use any colour that they wanted if it looked right. So in this document, I led with the green, and a lot of the colours are very obnoxious. And I set up some other logos in here so they could see them, and these are the 4 colours that I set. And then I set the fonts as well. I went for a Helvetica with a Druck wide and the Gallo Tree font, which is the crazy kind of horror font. And then the rest of the document is just kind of pretty standard stuff, to be honest. This is where I walked through each different logo, Braindead logo, and then I made a poster for it. And then the Texas Chainsaw Massacre logo, and I made a poster for that one too. And then the Friday the 13th one, and then I made a poster for that too. When I came to show this brand, so when I showed the brand to the client at first, they weren't sure about the logo until I showed them in the brand guidelines, and I showed it applied to these kind of posters, and I showed it applied in situ, and I explained the idea behind the whole thing. And I think this is an important point to stress with this as well. When you're presenting logos, never to present them just by themselves. Present them in its true situation. Present the whole thing and not just a little bit of the thing. Because if you just present a little bit of the thing, it can be difficult for the client to appreciate it and understand the idea in situ. We always have a joke at Genius Division that we say, just stick it on an iPhone and they'll appreciate it more. And they do, because they can see it in situ and they can see how this new brand is going to work. They can imagine it on an iPhone app, and then suddenly they're sold. So always show your logos and your brands on the final application where you can. I like to come up with some kind of basic brand guidelines and some mock-ups before I actually show the client, because it helps them understand. So that was a look behind the scenes at an old project that I really, really enjoyed working on, and I think turned out pretty well. I hope you enjoyed that video. Let me know if this video is useful. Let me know if you want me to do more of them, because I enjoyed doing this video, and I'll definitely do more of these if people think that they're useful, showing a deep dive underneath my thinking about a brand that I've previously designed. I'll be back tomorrow with another video. I hope you enjoyed this, and until then, I'll see you soon. Thank you.